This is for that feeling that anybody from Detroit gets whenever they're in that state of mind where they're representing their city. Let's go. It's that Motor City state of mind. Feet on the gas. Grand National, Grand River, off Grand. Half the joints.
Started my career right
drive
from
fast, make my city look sad. But Detroit ain't that
94.
bad. She just in rehab. That mean every now and
I
then
wrote the article that inspired
Forget
Jay
a
Crackman.
D-dab. Dog, bad, how you talk about the D-Black? I ain't preaching to y'all, I'm spitting these facts. Need some people in the D to get the streets back. You doing what you gotta do, dude, I see that. But when you do your thing, that's where my seeds at. That's where my family and my elderly at. The little kids see your pain, go through it, grow to it, then they gravitate and run congruent. Gotta speak truth to it. Ain't gotta be the same, but only you can say Detroit, the world ain't. Look, we used to say swole, now we say what up, though. We still the same vote, somebody changed, though. We used to say swole, now we say what up, though. We still the same.
Okay, that's what's up. Hi, Megan.
Hi. Hey, Khary. So, for those who don't know you, what's your name and where'd you grow up and what are you doing right now?
Khary Kimani Turner. I grew up in the city of Detroit, born and raised. I was born on the west side, raised on the east. So I'm a Finkel and Leisure baby, and I was a North Park cooperative teenager. I went to Miller Middle School, then U of D High School, and then went away to college and came back home and built a life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what were you like as a child?
I was inquisitive, I was shy, I was creative, but hadn't found a lane yet. That didn't happen until I was 13. But very expressive. My mom encouraged it. You know, it was my mom and dad were kind of like a Lady and the Tramp combination. I know my dad hates for me to say that, but he was a homicide cop. So he saw the trampiest parts of life in the city. And my mom was an educator. So between the two of them, they always worked to kind of like give me this balance. And the result was that it kind of made me recognize at a young age that there was this openness to be expressive. You know, you come home and one day dad's playing the blues, you know, Bobby Blue Bland and, you know, Muddy Waters, and then the next day you come home and mom's playing calypso and soca, and it's Byron Lee and the Dragonaires and Mighty Sparrow, and somewhere you find your lane. And then, you know, late 1970s, early 1980s come around, and hip-hop becomes a part of your life, and you're like, whoa, okay, Dad, you've got this, Mom, you've got this, and I have this. And then from there, music and literature kind of formed a mashup in my life. And I started that long road from there and building a career as a writer and an educator, and then an artist, you know, and now today they're married.
So do you feel that having an artistic side of you really contributes to how you live your life now and things that you work on as like your career?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you know, my wife and I were having this conversation the other day, and I was explaining to her why I put Queen Latifah in my top 5 for women MCs of all time, and it's because of what she's done with her whole life in hip hop. You know, and I'm a true believer in the culture of hip hop, and culture influences all aspects of your life. So I come from a class where you've got Dream Hampton, who started off writing. She's amazing, you know, but today she'll tell you she's far more a filmmaker than just a writer. You know, it limits her to just call her that. Or you've got Jessica Care Moore, who's far more a poet, far more an activist and a cultural force and an icon than just a poet. And me, today, I'm far more an educator and an executive than just an artist and a writer and a poet. Because, you know, what I did then influences the way I conduct myself at Coleman Young Foundation today. And my staff sees it. It's on the walls. You know, we're redesigning our space now, and there's a lot more of a creative vibe taking root at the foundation. And I'm reaching back into the community that groomed me. You know, I'm reaching back to some of the same guys and girls who were at Stanley's Rhythm Kitchen and the Hip Hop Shop and Ebony Showcase, and they're all the same age as me. They have teenage children. They have civic concerns now. You know, they're not just mic rockers. You know, so why not come over here and get involved with what we're doing? And it's all mashing up still. You know, it's cool.
So, were you making music when you were a kid too?
Yeah.
Any specific projects?
Yeah, like Royce said, Royce has this line in the song, hip hop, we started from nothing, a couple MCs beatboxing the crowd in the lunchroom. That was me. Started just on the corner. We started recording our music. I'm dating myself. I don't mind doing that. Around the mid-'80s, you know.
What was the name of your group?
The first name was the King Crew 2. It was like an old school name for the ages.
That's great.
We went from the King Crew 2 to the Omnipotent 2. Then we grew dreads, and the name changed again. We ended up being a crew called Open Mic, or Open Mic for short. And that's where the city at large came to hear us and gain a respect for us. And this was by now the early 90s to mid-90s. The days of Wu-Tang and, you know, into the 36 Chambers, and, you know, when hip-hop was really entrenched in that golden era, you know, and on the streets we were hearing about this kid named Eminem, and we were hearing about these guys named Slum Village, and we were somewhere in that mix, just trying to help to build the culture here in the city. And then on the side, I was writing, and that became a later story. That's where I think I made my strongest contribution to Detroit hip hop, because for many years I was the go-to journalist for MCs in the city with Metro Times and The Source and Double XL.
So you would write about like groups around?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when I go back and look at who I got a chance to sit and interview, and I feel I really feel a kinship and a connection to Detroit hip hop's development. I felt I got a chance to chronicle many of our seminal artists' rise to fame. You know, I got a chance to interview Dilla just after he left Slum Village. I got a chance to interview Slum Village on many occasions. Eminem when he was new. Royce when he was new. And then I got a chance to go and interview guys that were, you know, respected in certain parts of town where they were hood famous, but maybe you or someone else never got a chance to know them. But I got a chance to you know, communicate with, you know, members of East Side Cheddar Boys, and I'm forgetting the crew that made Cash Rules Everything Around Me. Just another day in Detroit City, you know. But you know, it's interesting. You know, you remember names or you remember songs and lyrics, but you were there. I was a part of that story, getting that story told, and that's a good feeling, knowing that that was my position, that was my role in Detroit hip hop's history. Yeah.
And so you went to school, went to college?
Yeah, I went away to college in 88, graduated and started in 88, 89 at Xavier University, and finished, came home in 93, and started working for the Urban League, and that's where I started to build my professional pedigree on the education and counseling side, but never stopped writing, you know, yeah, never stopped writing, never stopped making music. Yeah.
You still make music now?
I do. My greatest endeavor as a musician was with my band, Black Bottom Collective. From 2000 to 2010, we rocked real hard in the city. My wife was a member of the band. She was by my side for every show except one. Yeah, we rocked DePaul University with Slum Village, and she couldn't make that show, but we were an 8-man band, and yeah, we made noise. We made noise.
Instruments and everything?
Yeah, oh yeah. It was a full band. We were a mashup. We were kind of like what happens when the Roots meets Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yes.
You know, it was bananas. You know, and we would. Our house was 5th Avenue and Royal Oak. We played there every Thursday for about a good 3.5 to 4 year run. I remember what it felt like, that floor shaking every week. 300 to 400 people in the house, you know. Capacity was like 250. And but it was us, 8 of us, just living in the moment. Some of us are still heavily involved in music. DJ Invisible, who rocks with one of my dearest friends, Mike Ellison, and also is Exhibit's DJ. You know, he still travels the world and does his thing. My brother Kamal Anaya, they rocks with Collective Peace. Collective Peace is bananas. They remind me of us. Their vibe and their synergy really reminds me of what Black Bottom Collective had at our zenith. So that's cool, you know, and what was really cool was how history worked with everybody in the band. Everybody went on to either start and manage great businesses that are contributing to the region. I'm with Coleman Young Foundation. Mark Harper, who still makes music with me, owns and operates Black Lotus Brewery in Clawson on 14 in Maine. And they've got a dope musical set going on over there several days a week. My wife and I, you know, started a family. Just about all of us. We would really be Black Bottom community now, like Black Bottom County with all the babies in the crew. So that was the greatest contribution to Detroit music that I made, and my latest contribution is the Book Cadillac Music Project, which we dropped on December 25th, 2013.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Me and Mark Harper from Zaptoro, we did a 7-song EP.
Okay.
It's available on iTunes, and I always tell folks you can go to RDO and stream it if you want. I don't care. Just listen to the music. But we just did a 7-song EP. We still had an itch. We wanted to scratch it. But we wanted to do it respectful of our positions today. Okay. You know, business owners, family men.
So this is something everybody can listen to.
Yeah. You know, something weird happened with our music around 2006. I just stopped cussing. And it wasn't for any reason, you know?
It just happened?
Yeah, it just happened. I want my son to be able to listen to my music without having to fast forward it.
Okay.
You know? Mm-hmm. I don't mind the content, but the delivery, I want him to be able to absorb and go tell his friends about what his daddy did, you know? And I can do that now, you know? And we made that switch, and I just, I don't miss it.
So you do a lot of writing. You've written for everybody.
Yeah.
How important do you think how important is writing to, you know, pursuing your career in any field?
It's the cornerstone, Megan, because it's really, you're really talking about your ability to communicate.
Yeah.
A good writer is a bilingual individual. You know, when you think about it. Mm-hmm. I went from writing for The Source to, in different magazines, to co-authoring Kwame Kilpatrick's memoir, mm-hmm. you know, which is, you know, now infamous, but the greatest compliment I ever received was when a literary expert sat down and told me, this is a well-done project. As a writer, that's what you want. Mm-hmm. Capture the story and tell it well, you know, so that anybody can absorb the story. And now I'm helping Kim to co-author his memoir, to write his book. And then there's what I'm doing with Coleman Young Foundation. The scholarships that we offer to Detroit kids from Detroit neighborhoods and Detroit schools require that they be able to craft a sound essay, a collegiate level essay. Mm-hmm. And they're scored heavily. These are high school seniors.
Okay.
And, you know, it's interesting. And we live in a country where 60% of scholarship money gets left on the table because kids throughout America are afraid to write an essay. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a travesty. Do you think
that kids are afraid to express themselves in written form, or what do you think is the leading?
I think that's part of it. That I would have to say that's really part of it. Afraid, you know, fear of expressing yourself, lack of familiarity with your own voice. Mm-hmm. You know, you're an artist, so you understand the importance of being able to say it the way Megan wants to say it, mm-hmm. or write it the way Khary wants to write it. And then there are the mechanics. You know, too often we see opportunities for school systems of schools, which we really have today, to develop concrete or sound writing skills in young people from the cradle to the career. Mm-hmm. And the result that we see is that when it's time for you to apply for a scholarship that's going to give you 20 grand, up to 20 grand if you achieve it, you end up leaving that on the table simply because you can't give me 3 to 4 pages and answer 5 questions concretely and succinctly. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. Yeah. This time of year, I should be up all night reading essays. You know, I shouldn't be able to get it done in a couple of 8-hour shifts. You know, so that's, you know, my goal now, and art is a part of this. Mm-hmm. Creativity and expression is a big part of this, is to move that needle and get kids in the city back to the point where, one, writing an essay is not only not a problem, but you can't wait to do it. You've got something to say, and you know how to say it according to these standards, and you can say it well, mm-hmm. you know, and you dare me to turn you away. That's what I want.
Yeah, it's like a confidence.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Confidence in yourself.
Yeah, think about it. You know, the person who can write well can go anywhere. Mm-hmm. Anywhere. You know? I think my greatest blessing in life is that I can write a rhyme, I can write a poem, I can talk to you about structure on both ends, mm-hmm. I can write an essay, I can write a book, I can write a newspaper article or a magazine article. So if you want me to write a script for the first time in my life, I'm not flinching. Just tell me what you want. Right. I'm good, you know? I can do that. You know, I've done it creatively. I've done it as a hard news journalist. And I've done it in long form. I know the discipline that goes into noveling. I've lived it. You know, I'm okay with it. Yeah. Getting up at 5 in the morning, spending an hour scribing before my son wakes up. You know, I'm okay with that. I don't lose sleep over it, and I still look young and pretty and gorgeous. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, that's a real skill that you have to craft, you know, and I think there needs to be some importance placed on crafting that skill in our young people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you helped Kwame in his autobiography. Mm-hmm. Have you written other books?
Well, my first book was a poetry book. Mm-hmm. Self-published it in 2000. And my second book was Surrendered, which was the memoir of Kwame Kilpatrick. My third book is in process. Okay. And that is the as yet to be titled Memoir of Kemp, the Universal Motown recording artist.
What was it like working with
Put it down. I'm looking pudgy? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
What was it like working with Kwame Kilpatrick on this autobiography?
It was life-changing. It was life-changing because in all of the scandal and the energy around it, his brilliance ceased at some point to be a part of the discussion. Mm-hmm. You know, he has an amazing ability, kind of like a Bill Clinton-like ability to influence a room and retain information. He's like this walking memory bank. So that alone makes for intriguing conversation. Anytime you talk to somebody who can think back 10 and 20 years and remember finite details, mm-hmm. you're in for long, interesting conversations. You know, so from that standpoint, I was impressed by his command. And then of course, you know, you spend 3.5 years working on a project, and it brings you really close. You become a fly on the wall to a lot of the grout in between the blocks of this scandalous period. His sons losing their dad, his wife losing her husband, and him losing his freedom. You know, it was just an amazing time. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think the best thing that I could do in that period was to serve my position as a writer well, and get the story told so that one day when some revisionist historian goes back and wants to look at everything that's on the record, that project is there to be found and to be read and to be considered, you know, in the whole context. And that's what a good book does. You know, it reminds you of the greatest times, whether they're negatively great or positively great, the greatest times in your history. Would I do that kind of project again? After a long, deep breath
to my
and
city,
a
put you
whole
up
lot
on
of
that edge. Home of Coney Island, you buy we fry fish. Appetizer, the chili cheese fried dish. Neighborhoods might put your body at risk. Let your block clubs organize and don't promote this. Up south, everybody got a little miss. Alabama, Carolina folk who came to work shifts up in plants where we